Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. It's the Mimi and Greg Show. In this episode, we discuss President Biden's recent announcement and why endorsing Kamala Harris is the right move for the future of our nation. Ready for a Rucka Rant? Well, it's more of an episode rant as we dissect the last few days in politics. This was recorded on Tuesday, July 23rd. The timing of President Biden's announcement couldn't be more critical. With the political landscape shifting rapidly and the 2024 election cycle gearing up, the administration's decision to endorse Vice President Kamala Harris signifies a strong commitment to continuity, stability, and progressive values. Greg and I unpack the significance of this endorsement and its potential impact on the upcoming election. He always has a deep understanding of political dynamics, and I enjoy learning from our conversations. Our hopes in this decision is that it will unite the Democratic base, attract undecided voters, and counteract the opposition's narrative. We couldn't help but express our deep frustration with the media landscape. Capitalism, anyone? The relentless pursuit of ratings and clicks can distort important issues. Not only does it undermine the integrity of journalism, but it also detracts from the crucial conversations we need to have about our nation's future. Lazarus fans, we do talk a bit about the comic, so stay tuned to the very end. Thank you all for your continued support. I've been enjoying these conversations and hope you have too. If you have, please rate my podcast on your platform of choice and share it with others. If you would like to support with a donation to help keep this podcast going and support the work I do, you can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com/SifuMimiChan. For comments or suggestions, reach out on social media at SifuMimiChan. Now on with the show. Hello.
I gotta get
We're recording. We're recording. Oh, I love your shirt.
There we go.
We are both sporting like fancy shirts today.
We are sporting our statements. Yes.
And it's
yours.
It's like,
yours is that badass women should carry swords and save the world, and mine is let people love each other. Mm-hmm. Radical thinking. Insane, isn't it?
How dare you?
Hello. How you been?
Hello. I'm so good now.
I know it's just me, isn't it? It's just me. It can't
really
be anything else.
It really is. It's funny because, we didn't even plan the cool shirts. And we actually, this is quasi impromptu. Like I knew I would be talking to you this week, but then of course it was like,
yeah, God, yes, I hope you have questions ready.
Now. I listened back to our last episode and I was like, oh, wow, I had to do all my very blessed team. Thank you so much. Had to do all sorts of fun splicing because we're just not going to record. Actually, we're just going to go ahead and
we are kind of recording
everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, well, in typical Mimi and Greg show fashion. So
we're making this one a little easier. So.
It was the comeback everybody wanted.
Yeah. Well, they got it.
They sure did. And it's good to see you though. I've been I was teasing because of course we texted on Sunday night or Monday or whatever it was. I'm like, what could we possibly have to talk about this week? Yeah. I don't know. Nothing's happening.
Yeah. Sad, really. You forget, when we're living in this state of hypervigilance, you get used to it. And then you hit these sort of lulls and you just don't know what to do with yourself.
Mm-hmm. I understand.
Yeah. We had a power outage on Sunday here. There was this massive thunderstorm, very localized, rolled in. And I'm sure there was a lightning strike very close by, and it killed power for a good 4 or 5 hours. And I had been working, right? And the announcement had come. I had gone down to the office. I had all this work to do, and the power went out. All the lights go out. All the computers go out. The door to my office closes automatically and locks me in. So I'm in the dark, and Evelyn comes downstairs 20 minutes later with her phone flashlight being like, Mom wants me to check on you. I'm like, I'm okay. So get up, I get out, I'm doing whatever. And I check on the Discord and somebody has posted or reposted a gag from Blue Sky or the fascist recruitment site of the power outages. It's something along the lines of like all of the hot take emergency podcasts that are now recording, and they need to be staggered because of the strain they're putting on the grid. And I thought that was very, I was like, yeah, that's a fair take. That's a fair take. I went over to see Fraction because, suddenly I was like, oh, I have time in my day and I have this stuff I've been meaning to bring to him. And I had a present. Jen and I had a present we wanted to give to Kelly Sue for her birthday.
Yes.
And I went over, and Matt being Matt, the TV is on and it's MSNBC and he's sitting there with his phone and texting like crazy. And I'm just like, don't want to see it.
Right. Disengage.
But clearly it was the right move because it's the most successful period of presidential fundraising in 48 hours.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was insane.
People,
I actually only know because people tell me, because as you know, I don't take in the news. So kind of like you're like, no, not see, but insane. And young people, because I do follow, because occasionally when I have to go in and do a post, the March for Our Lives kids, not kids anymore, and they were like, yeah, in less than an hour it was like 350 or something K. And I was like, yes, that's the demographic we want engaged. So yes.
No, it clearly was answering something I think spoken but not quite articulated.
Mm-hmm.
I went out walking yesterday and I know where I live, right? I'm in Portland. I recognize where I live.
Oh.
But, this was yesterday. I took Marlo out for a walk in the morning and I saw 3 Kit Bash signs up already.
Oh.
That was just people pulled out their old signs and modified them and they were up and out. And, I was out again this morning. I saw another 2. So it was people were ready. Let's say people were ready.
Yeah.
And our good buddy Spencer, his newsletter,
Yes, that's where I do take in news is through Spencer's newsletter, of course.
Yeah. So
because I trust.
it is it is a moment. There is a piece of me that's like, okay, everybody just keep your powder dry a little longer. I was saying this almost immediately, when Biden speaks to the nation, if he stands up there and he has the courage to say, I am this old and I am suffering cognitive decline. Like it's hard to admit. I don't want to admit it, but I am. I have Alzheimer's, or I have Parkinson's, or I am simply quite old, and it is hard. My brain does not work the way it used to, and that's a hard thing to accept. But here I am, and for the good of the country and the good of the party, I am stepping away. And I have every faith in Kamala and all my support. He does that, then, that's a great big neon pointer going straight to Trump and refocusing once again on this thing that the media has been really negligent in doing, and they've been negligent in doing because it doesn't serve their agenda. Their agenda is, I want you terrified and angry, right? Mm-hmm. And they have been loving shit for the last month in particular because they couldn't have programmed it better. We have so many people hysterical and worked up right now It's brilliant. But if Biden does that, then all of a sudden the media has to start paying attention to the words coming out of Hissy Fitler's mouth and the incoherence of them and the inability to string coherent thought together, right? Literally, it highlights the fact that here's a guy who said, I can't do it at the level that needs to be done. So I'm stepping down and incidentally endorsing this woman who absolutely can do it.
Yeah.
And here's the other person who wants the job, and he still thinks 2 + 2 is 7. You know? And I think that could be, you know, and then just never mind how, you know, I was talking to Mark Evans yesterday, right? And I was like, dude, when you were running Paramount, if I had come to you and I said, okay, former prosecutor running against convicted felon, you would have written me a check for that in a hot second. And he laughed, you know, and he was like, you can't write it. You know,
yeah, that's the whole reality is crazier than fiction. But there's a lot there. One is like the perpetual, the media got us kind of into this to begin with. And it's just they have such a responsibility to, quote unquote, do the right thing. I have no faith in that.
No, they don't. I mean, because that responsibility is gone. Right.
That's like what I mean. It's like,
we
who's
want them
left?
to. That
we only have our
Yeah.
newsletters, you know, from Spencer Ackerman, and we only have.
Well, and I love Spencer, but Spencer's got an agenda.
Yes.
Spencer absolutely has an agenda. And there are people who are not going to read Spencer's stuff because they don't agree with his agenda.
Right.
You know, I mean, we there has always been this myth of objectivity in reporting. And we've talked about this before, and there's no such thing. You cannot objectively report. You know, you cannot be a, you know, to bastardize Emerson, you can't be an unfeeling eyeball. You know what I mean? You're not. We are subjective. We take things in and interpret. But that said, also, it is, I think, morally and ethically wrong to argue for objective journalism, right? There's a difference between editorializing and reportage. And to say that reportage does not have a right to say this is evil, this is wrong, this is tragic, this is bad, right? To say that's not being objective enough. If I blow up a bus full of orphans, that's evil, right? That is bad. That should not be reported as, oh, here's the thing that happened. Right. It's a tragedy.
Yes.
It's horrible, right? And so that's all on one side. And then, like I said, look, the purpose is not, the purpose is not to educate or inform. The purpose is to earn money. And therefore, my newspaper does not need to educate or inform you. What my newspaper needs to do is earn money. Everything else not even being secondary anymore. And right?
Yeah.
It used to be this was this is a means of information, and it was possible to monetize it to keep it going,
right?
And now it's it's a hi, welcome to end stage capitalism again. It's about how much money can we get.
I was going to say, here we go back to the money and the greed.
Am I wrong?
Right.
Tell me.
No,
I would love to be wrong.
I know. The problem is you're right. It's what's frustrating. And going back to Biden doing the quote unquote right thing, it's like you said, it's the harder thing for him to do
it's incredibly hard.
It's incredibly hard. And the immediate, and you nipped in the Discord very nicely, by the way. Thank you for that. I was like, Oscar, I shall read this out loud to you now, because Greg basically just was like, everyone, let's zip it. It's so easy to point fingers, give your opinion, be angry, lash out, like should have done this sooner, should have, et cetera, et cetera. But it's like, wow, could have actually continued to make the wrong decision based on like the trajectory of what was happening. But I think, yeah, making the more difficult decision is absolutely the more courageous thing to do. And I mean, again, putting the good of the country ahead of one's personal agenda.
The dramatist in me, and the dramatist in me loves it, right? Because the dramatist in me, it brings together, frankly, everything that we want to see in public service, right? It brings us, you know what it does? But the West Wing has been described not inaccurately as, liberal spanking, media. It's liberal porn. But one of the things that the West Wing did so well, and it influenced a whole generation, right? There are people in politics now as a direct result of the idealism they saw in that show, right? Sorry, flying things. It's summer and my office is infested. But there are people who they responded to that call of service, right? And this idea of being part of this greater thing. And you don't need a writer to tell you, here's a man who, regardless of your opinion of, his choices, right? Clearly has spent his life in service, spent 8 years as Barack Obama's vice president, wanted the presidency, got the presidency, beat a guy in getting to the presidency that really needed beating, to most of us, I think. A lot of people saw that writing on the wall, has been quietly competent through this administration, right? A lot of what this administration has done has not gotten headlines because it's not sexy and doesn't sell clicks, right? This is why the media, again, is going crazy over Hissy Fitler. But ran that first time very much on, I can beat this guy. Now, all that the orange shit gibbon does is make things personal. I'm sorry if people are offended.
Don't be
I just am not going to say the name.
I'm pretty sure anyone listening,
everybody knows. But I'm going to say, like,
they know what station they tuned into.
Look, if we're on Facebook, they'll take this down as political. But so he has positioned himself, right, as the guy who can beat him, and he does. And now everything up until this last week was, it was being made personal, right? Because Hissy Fitler can't not. All he can ever do is make his attacks personal, right? This is about coming back and I'm going to get him because I can't be a loser, right? He embodies a MAGA philosophy that says defeat under any circumstances is unforgivable and untenable. It's a moral and ethical failing to have lost, right?
But of course, in his mind, he didn't lose.
Right. Well, that's why it had to have been stolen, because he couldn't have been beaten.
He couldn't have. No, the narcissist in him wouldn't have allowed that thought.
And so the investment here, right, is I won't let it happen twice. I'll be vindicated. Okay. Now flip it. And if you're Biden, everything else going on, there's also this personal thing. Here's this guy saying horrible things, part of a machine that has been doing horrible things to you and your family. and the people around you. And you are on one level being told, sit this one out. You're not up for the fight. And on a, like I say, as the dramatist in me looks at that and goes, that's an incredibly personal thing, right? To be the person who can feel everything he's undoubtedly feeling about this choice and still come and say, no, I'm gonna step away. I'm gonna hand it over to Kamala because she can do it. She can land the plane, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think that in a way that, again, going back to sort of that West Wing, and like I say, I don't know how much of this is just the narrative desire in human beings, in me, but that is inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you stop and you think about it, it is inspiring because we sure as hell know the guy that they're running against wouldn't ever do it. Would not ever sit down for the good of the country.
Oh, he does nothing for the good of the country.
But this is, well, or the good of his party, right? The party, you know, his whole party is now an adjunct to that cult. This is part of the problem, right? Because there may well be Republicans out there who really don't like where they are, but they're not standing up and saying it.
No,
they're not doing anything about it.
They haven't done anything about it.
It is morally bankrupt of them. It is such an extreme act of cowardice. It's one thing for you or me not to stand up, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, right? But it's one thing for us to do it. Our pulpits are small. Our audiences are small. We are not elected officials. Right. We have not taken an oath to serve the country.
Right. Yes. We're not public servants.
Yeah. It's an entirely different thing.
To be a public servant.
It's an entirely different ball of wax when you're in this office, having been elected to it on the basis of serving not just a constituency, but the republic as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And to know this is wrong and bad, and to stay silent about it, or worse, swear allegiance.
Yes, it's oh gosh, it's so.
It is problematic, shall we say?
Super problematic. Well,
this is
why early on, and we bashed this in during the pandemic, you and I, when we went on and on and on, because it was just like day after day, we just couldn't believe how that party just flipped and changed. And I started to respect people like, you know, Liz Cheney, and people I would never have agreed with on anything else policy-wise. And I'm like, but wow. This is a person that is stepping away from this evil and is standing up for what the beliefs actually were.
I was thinking about this and Newt Gingrich has a lot to answer for. He's got a lot to answer for. Like, if there is a God, when Newt gets kicked off, he's going to have an accounting. The decision to form the GOP as a lockstep unit, and that they did so with punitive, penalties if you did not. Is one of the most crucial things that has led to what the GOP has become today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's made it so it's no longer the GOP. It's completely. It's a MAGA. It's the MAGA party.
It's the MAGA party. Exactly.
Yeah. It's the American Christo Fascist Union. I don't know what to call it. But it's. That's on Newt. That's on Newt. Yeah. I dropped that right back to Gingrich. That's on Newt. And I'm old enough to remember that stuff. And we don't get here overnight. There were a series of very deliberate steps taken in politics that tied in with clearly a very long-term agenda. Hillary Clinton, when she was first lady, and she got pilloried for this, talked about the conservative conspiracy. And, she was right. It was 20 years along at that point, and she was dead right.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
the seeds have been planted a long time ago, and
I'm never going to run, right? I would never going to run, and I'm patently unelectable. But and it's not like I'm it's not like I don't know how I'm voting, but I swear to God, if Kamala in the next month or two says one of the first things we're going to do in the Department of Education is reinstate mandatory civics education at grade 7, between grade 7 and 9, in every educational institution, every curriculum, be it private, public, home, you have to take civics. I would be all over that. There's a reason civics curriculum has been dropped, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't, don't explain to people how the system works and how it's supposed to work, it's that much easier to break it.
Yep. And then you're just getting the outside media. Yet again, that's where they're getting their sources. Yeah. Well, education, as we know, is fairly broken, as so many other things in the system. But it's true. This is why they're erasing so many things and then putting in their quote unquote civics. Because here in Florida, they have their civic education, but it is not civics. It is not accurate, and it's super problematic. And just kind of going back to everyone's immediate reaction. And I'm with you. I'm never running. And I just interviewed a local county judge yesterday, or a candidate for county judge that I am supporting. And it's funny because we were talking on the podcast, and she's like, it's not something I ever wanted to do, but I felt a responsibility and all these things. And it's such a weighted thing to want to work in public service. And I think about Biden and how he's just literally his entire life has been dedicated to service and serving. And then, yes, things have been done incorrectly, but it's almost impossible, I think, in these positions to be perfect. Like, there's no perfect politician. Having a small 2.5-year stint in legislative work.
Yeah.
I can't say that everything went perfectly the way I wanted it to be. No, that's just not how it goes. You have to have conversations with people you don't want to, and you had to work with them
and compromise.
Compromise, yes.
Right. Remember, that's what politics used to be. Right. Yes. It used to be about finding the compromise, finding the thing that benefited the most, that everybody could live with. It was, what's the phrase? Nobody's happy, but everybody can live with it. And that was the goal, right? And again, go back to Newt. And it became, no, we either get everything we want, or we salt the earth. Mm-hmm. And that's how we get where we are today. There is no maybe there's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Maybe there's, you'll get some of it and we'll get some of it legislatively. There are certain absolutes, right? There are certain absolutes. Some things you cannot, and this is a really unfortunate turn of phrase, but it's appropriate. You cannot split the baby on abortion, for instance, right? You either allow it or you don't. You can try to nuance it and say, well, at X many weeks, or right, or in these circumstances. Mm-hmm. But on almost every other legislative level, right, it's a question of finding, what's the best we can do for the most? It's never going to be perfect. Mm-hmm. It's never going to be perfect. And this, and because of the shift away from that, because of where we're living now, the world we're living in now, and because in particular social media, and you see it all the time on social media, I'm a one issue voter. He fucked up on this. He can burn in hell. And it's like, you know, I was talking, I think it was Mark Russell, the writer Mark Russell was saying, you know, he was talking about the bus route version of politics, right? Which is, look, it's not a car, right? You vote for the politician who's going to get you the closest to your destination.
Yes, I was actually just going to bring that up. I'm like, 4 years ago, you and I had the same conversation, and that is exactly what you said. And I was like, I don't know why people don't get this.
Well, because
instead they're like, we're not getting on the bus at all, and then it messes up the vote.
There's this belief they should get only what they want.
Right.
Right. This idea of, if I can't have it, right, I don't want close enough, or I don't want near it. I want it all, and I want it's the Homer Simpson gag about the deep fryer. It can deep fry a bison in 45 seconds. 45 seconds, I want it now. Right? And
yeah, I think but there's no saving the people who are flying the flags out in their yard right now about taking the country back, and I'm, you know, MAGA voters. There's no more conversation there. The people that frustrate me the most are these quote unquote undecideds who are like, well, let's just see. And I was in Hawaii and I was talking to my friend, and he's a writer like yourself, so always strings together the right analogies. And it was like, it's like you're at a luncheon and you're like, you know, are you going to have the chicken, or are you going to have this virus infested, you know, mud maggot sandwich? And they're like, well, how's the chicken cooked? You know,
yeah, it's exactly it. I don't know. Is it free range?
I mean,
is it free range? It's like, one of these things is, well,
will kill you.
I mean,
like,
it's
this
also
is going to kill you, but
it's also the trolley problem, right? It's also the trolley problem, because there is an element of like, it's not just here's a shit sandwich. And here's the fried turkey breast, right? It's, and you can eat the shit sandwich and it will kill other people, right? Like people you don't know will suffer horribly.
Yes.
Right? They're going to go into camps. They're going to be executed. They will have their homes taken from them. Right? Literally, they will. There is a 900-page document that says precisely what will happen. And it touches on every aspect of life. I love the fact that one of the things in 2025 is the aggregating of overtime from instead of a week to a month, which means, as an employer, I can work you like hell for a week, right? You're working 18-hour days, and I don't have to pay you overtime because I'm going to give you the next week at your normal or half hours, right? So you aren't compensated for the effort, right? Overtime doesn't matter. I mean, just think about that. Who does that benefit? That doesn't benefit the small business owner.
Or the workers.
You got it. You know, this is, so yeah, I don't have patience for, but we have talked about it many a time. It's a bus. It's a bus.
Yes.
We're all getting on the bus.
Get on the damn bus, people. Get on the freaking bus.
And if you want it to get off right in front of your house, you're going to have to work to get a better bus line. And you don't do that by not taking the bus.
Or getting on the one that goes in the opposite direction.
Oh, yeah, that's the other one. And that's where the analogy sort of falls apart, right?
But that's the same thing as not getting on the bus, because like people who go, oh, well, I'm just not going to vote, or I
don't use the bus.
You're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I've been really good about not trying to take in information, but of course I'm getting live texts whenever something happens. Like you said, you go over to Fraction's house and it's like, oh, this stuff is on. But Oscar is really good about like, okay, you'll like this. It's a 5 to 10 minute podcast snippet. And Ezra Klein did a really great 10-15 minute thing on safety and just like that concept of like, can Kamala win, right? And that was Forever Wars also kind of was like, yes, she can. And it was like, it's not just the prosecution part of it anymore. It's the fact at how unsafe, you know, a hissy Fitler administration will be this time around. It's not what it was last time, right? This is where now everybody's in line, only the loyalists, only the loyal, only the people that are willing to push the agenda. It's just all the gloves are off. And like our fundamental rights with the Supreme Court picks are already problematic. The incitation of violence,
they're gone.
It's threatening.
Yeah. I mean,
this is like there's a matter of safety. And I was trying to think of how I'm going to be able to word this because I want to write something about this in terms of like the experience of being a female and then being a female, you know, person of color, and then what that's like this feeling of being unsafe sometimes that a lot of people don't understand, that even as a Kung Fu master, right? There's still this feeling that other people can't actually understand. And I don't know how to articulate it quite well, but I feel like everyone is going to be in an unsafe predicament if this goes south, if this goes the wrong way. And it's like, if the media can pick up on the safety issue, if everyone can start to see and how like dangerous and unsafe this will be for them, you know, we can kind of go towards the less chaotic, violent incitation. Like this has been, it's crazy. It's just super crazy. And so I was just like, I don't know how to wrap my head around it, but I feel like there's just this way of people having to understand what this really means for them. This is like emperorship coming down the pipeline.
You're not alone. A lot of people don't feel safe. And it is fatiguing and stressful and misery inducing. And I think, honestly, it's one of the other things that that serves Harris, right? Because don't worry that she's not safe, right? Like
right.
I think a lot of people.
I think the
still
thing
think
was about was like she's a prosecutor and everything, but that's not even the thing. It's like she can create a safe.
She's sane
country. And she's sane.
I mean, I still think, you know, we talk about the uncommitted and the independent voter, and I still think there are a lot of people out there who are viewed as uncommitted or independent. They're not talking, right? And they may view themselves as conservatives. They may view themselves as good Christians, you know, and so on. I do think a lot of them just want stability. Mm-hmm. They want a sense of normalcy again. The biggest problem is that the longer we go without things being normal, right? And, you know, we're coming up on a decade now, right? Since shithead was elected. I think there's a genuine desire for, one of the things we got out of Biden was a boring presidency.
Right. And you told me 4 years ago, this is just a break.
Yeah.
It's a short break.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, can we get to boring again? And here's the thing, right? Harris wins. The problem doesn't go away. Mm-hmm. There are steps that have to be taken actively. We've got the MAGA party already saying that they will not accept an election where their guy doesn't win. That's a hell of a thing to say 6 months before an election.
Yep.
And we've got a court that has effectively said, if it comes to us, we're giving it to the orange guy.
Yep.
So, there's going to be there's a lot of fighting left to do. And there are reasons to be scared. There are not reasons to panic. Fear is a fine motivator to vote. It's not a good reason to keep reading the news. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm going to let everyone hear. Actually, I thought you really articulated super well in the Discord, because I think people are running around screaming like their house is literally on fire when it's not yet. Like, we need to be vigilant. But you were like, that's enough. We're not going to have fear mongering and anger flexing. So knock it the fuck off. It's 5 months out. So much can happen in 5 months. And this whole fucking thing has been an exercise in hysteria and panic. Yes, there are genuine reasons to be very, very afraid of a hissy fitlet win. That has not changed. The only people who have benefited in the last few weeks are corporations, and in particular, media corps. They sell fear. They sell anger. Stop. Fine. It is rational to be afraid. It is not rational to panic. And I was like, thank you, Greg. Thank you, because so many people need to hear that.
I'm susceptible to it. I mean, that sounds really arrogant. Well, because it makes it seem like, and I shouldn't. What you
just said though, which was like, hey, everyone, calm down.
I freak out. Like, I have to actively be like, walk and breathe and think and don't look and do something else. Mm-hmm. Work on the novel, answer emails, do something. Don't doom scroll, right? Yeah. Because I genuinely believe, it's like a lot of the media companies making money hand over fist right now. They're making so much money. They are sitting around fat and happy and rolling around like Scrooge McDuck on piles of coins. And okay, but we don't have to feed it.
Yeah,
it takes effort.
It takes a lot of effort and control. It's hard, right? Because even on Sunday, I was like, okay, let me just see the 5 minutes. And then I'm like, all right, I go turn it off now. I'm like, literally, we have had no news in this house since December.
I've had to turn off, and I realized that my iPhone does it, right? I'll pick it up and it will have pushed things to the lock screen. And I literally had to go through and be like, no, like those, the lock screen I don't want to see any of these the headlines. I don't want any. But yeah, that you have to actively engage in defense. You really do, because you'll be minding your own, and then all of a sudden you'll get a spam text being like, "This happened," and it's like, block, stop, enough.
I know, and that's why I don't actually need, because people go, well, if you don't listen to the news, how do you know what's going on? I was like, because everyone is dying to tell me, and there's no way I'm not going to get enough of the information, right?
And it's a misapprehension, right? How will you know? It's like, that's not what's happening with you. You're not being informed. You're being spun up, right? I want to be informed. I am going to choose the vectors, because the news will find me. Nobody who has even the most remote interest in what's happening in politics at this point does not know that Biden has said, I am not going to seek a second term, and I have endorsed Kamala. There's nobody who doesn't know that. You will have found out. And you knowing that 2 days ago versus finding it out today, no benefit. Right? Like, if you knew the moment it happened, all that got you was 2 days of agita.
Yes.
That's all it got you.
Yeah.
You're still in the same place. Guess what? Here we are. It's Tuesday. It's noon. It's almost 1 o'clock my time. And Biden still is not seeking a second term, and Kamala is still the endorsed nominee by the sitting president. Okay, great. What's changed? Well, apparently a lot of money was raised for her in the last 48 hours.
Yes.
Groovy. Apparently Hissy Fitler fell all over himself trying to come up with all the most racist dog whistling he could. Keep it up.
Exactly.
Push that
That's what
button,
I say. Keep
jump
it
up and down on it, because what's going to happen now is you're going to start alienating people. You're going to start alienating people. It's one thing, right? This party has gotten really far on saying the quiet part out loud. Well, let's see how much of it they can keep saying out loud. How many people want to own that and wear it?
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to be one of these, Florida white women wearing the novelty diapers who go, real men wear diapers, right? It's another thing to be, a white middle class, suburban, educated housewife who has been inclined to the conservative politics because you don't like what you're seeing, that Fox News is showing you in the inner city. There's a line there from my quiet racism to saying it aloud. There is a line there. And if I do that, I have to own it in the mirror.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I want to own that in the mirror.
Right.
And Trump is going to drag everybody there. They're going to have to own it. Now, he's got diehards who've already owned it and they're happy. They have tattooed swastikas on themselves. They make no bones about it. For a lot of people, I think that this really runs the risk because Trump can't help himself.
No.
He can't help himself. He has no impulse control with this regard.
No censor.
He has no censor, and he has the pathological narcissist's need for attention. He raises his hand after having been clipped by the bullet, not as a conscious gesture. He does that because he lives in front of cameras and he understands. That's his whole world. How do I look on TV? Wasn't even a conscious choice. That's terrifying. Right?
Terrifying.
That it wasn't conscious on his part. It was a reflexive. But now put that guy on a stage opposite Kamala and see how long he can keep from saying something
offensive.
Yeah.
Highly likely if you give it 2 minutes.
I'm not sure he can do it. And all she has to do is keep her cool long enough and poke him enough. Yeah. And do you think the prosecutor knows how to do that?
That's what I said. I was because everyone's like, oh God, I hope she doesn't choke. I hope she doesn't freak out. And I go, yeah, you know what? Everything's on the line, but she also is a prosecutor. I mean, that's all she's been trained to do. She's also a woman of color. You kind of want to feed her raw meat before the debate. You don't think that she's been attacked from personally before? You don't think she's ever been meant to felt bad? You don't think she's ever been come on, she's been honed for this.
Yeah, this is not her first. Also, not her first debate. Not the first office she's run for.
Exactly. So I feel good about that. The voting, I just don't have trust in people anymore because of what they've historically shown us in the last, 6 years or so.
But again, I don't even know what people have shown us, right? Because I honestly don't know how, a lot of people have been apathetic and disengaged. I think that's true. We know people can be engaged and brought there. We also know that there's been a lot of manipulation. Gerrymandering cannot ever be ignored, the extent of it.
The thing about Florida, for sure.
And go on and on. And, so I don't know. I like I say, there are reasons to be If you're not afraid, you're not paying attention. So use the fear. That's where I get my best work. Anger and fear tend to be great motivators. Panic is no use to anybody because you can't get anything accomplished.
Yeah.
But we know what we're working for. We know what to watch for. And again, it's a long way between now and election day.
I know.
It's a long
so
trip.
Painful.
That's the other thing, right? This is a marathon.
We need to take care of ourselves, everybody. It's going to be a really long 5 months.
Yeah. And what we need to start doing is having shorter election cycles. So
agreed. Like the quote unquote allowed to campaign kind of thing is supposedly this and that, but it just doesn't matter because they just, like you said, the news wants to pick it up, and consumers keep rewarding the behavior by giving the viewership.
But I don't know. See, I actually kind of wonder about that too, because there's nothing else to watch. Like, if this is all there is, right? And so I don't know if it's because the American populace is so hungry for election coverage. I don't think it's
addictive. I think it's because it's addictive.
Yes,
everyone's talking about it. Again, I didn't even know about the assassination attempt. Someone texted me to tell me.
Yeah.
I didn't know because I don't have a way of viewing that or getting that information, but I know I don't need to because I'm going to get texted.
Exactly. That's exactly. It'll find you.
I don't even watch. I didn't watch the first debate. Right. And I said, I already know who I'm voting for. I don't want to know. I don't need to hear it. I know who I'm voting for. It's not 45. It's not the Orange Nightmare. That's been very clear. So I already know. And I don't, for my self-care, like, I get it. Some people feel the need to understand more, want to hear more for their arguments they're going to have with people. But my mental health tells me like, I need to.
And emotional health.
And emotional health. Yeah. Yes. It's taken a toll for sure. But it was interesting. You just said like, oh yeah, fear kind of allows you to be productive. Panicking, of course, doesn't. And so I was going to ask, because you are in the midst of some very major, important creative work for us.
Important?
Yes, for us.
Important?
Fan base. It is important because, like you said, we don't have anything else to read or watch right now that we need more.
Yeah, but 2025 is going to be a big year, Mimi. It's going to be a big year.
I know. But it does allow you're able to kind of focus in past all the noise. I mean, I know there's always noise, but this is some special noise happening right now.
Yeah.
Well, especially if you're getting locked in your office.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing else to do. No, I had a
turn on the battery light. I
had a really productive week last week. Like I said, I lost Sunday and I was really disappointed because I had a lot of stuff I wanted to do Sunday. There's a whole bunch of Lazarus Fallen in the first 6 issues, but in particular issue 2, a lot of it's in French. And Michael and I and Alejandro had a conversation early last week about like, are we going to do that thing where we do carrots? Like, because we've been all over the place in how we do languages other than English in the series. Yeah. And I hate the carrots. I don't like them. I think it's they make sense in certain titles. In Lazarus, I think they sort of fly. They break the verisimilitude of the world, if that makes sense, right? Because a lot of the fiction of Lazarus is this very grounded fiction, and saying, and here's somebody who's German and they're really speaking English, but with carrots around it. So you can understand. No, they're not. They speak German, right? And if you don't understand German, then you do not understand what they are saying, but hopefully, because it is a visual medium,
right?
You can determine it contextually, right? So there's a sequence, where characters are speaking English and French a lot. And I had done carrots, and we were kind of like, well, let's see if we can do it in French. So my dear bride, one of her oldest friends, is married to a Frenchman who lives in the US and who works as a professional translator. And I've used him once or twice. I reached out to him like on Thursday, and I was like, there's some dialogue. Would you be willing to translate? And I was specific. I was like, I want it as colloquial as possible.
Yeah.
This is how people would be speaking to each other. Mm-hmm. So, he was going back and forth. I'm not sure I understand what do they mean here? Because you want to be able to use idiom, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like the result. I like the result we've got now. And Ariana's going to be lettering very shortly. And, then we're going to actually have these issues pretty much locked. And we'll be able to review and double check. And then that's the other thing, right? Like I'm using Microsoft Word in English. It wants to autocorrect all my French. And it's like, no, I really
I know red lines.
Exactly. or the ones where it goes like, oh, you said this, but you actually misspaced it. So we're going to move this RE over to the beginning of this new word. And it's like, no, that was intentional.
Right. But you don't want to turn it off because it's just for that portion, and it would be a pain to go back and forth.
Right? I don't know. I'm discovering this a lot with the novel, because I was doing a lot of transcription the last couple of days too, which, taking what I'd written longhand and sort of editing it in to this doc. And maybe I'm becoming a worse typist. Maybe there's an issue with my keyboard, which is possible. But I go back on these rereads and I'm like, that's not what I typed. That is not what I typed. And I go into the
auto fill-in.
I go into the settings and I'm like, it shouldn't be changing anything. I mean, I literally told it, you can't do this and you are not allowed to do any of these things. And it seems to be doing it so it's either doing it anyway, or there's something wrong with me. And it's quite possible there's something wrong with me.
It's the Cylons. The computer is a mind of its own.
But I got to tell you, I'm a little ticked at because there are other things, like I use Scrivener for a lot of my comic book writing and for the games I run online, like my play-by-post games, I use Scrivener.
Okay.
And I'll find it's auto-correcting stuff left and right, or it's going, oh, you didn't mean plural, you meant singular.
The worst how they're telling us what we mean.
The grammatical changes when I'm working in fiction drive me crazy. It's like, it's that Chandler. It's the Chandler quote about when I split an infinitive, God damn it, I split it so it shall stay split. It's like, maybe I'm doing this on purpose. Right? Maybe
I am Greg Rucka.
Yeah. The computer doesn't care. Is the problem? It's like, yeah, you and that in a buck will get you water, in a plastic glass. Gonna say I'll get you a cup of coffee. You can't get. I mean, maybe in a bodega somewhere. Gas station coffee. You could probably get gas station coffee for $1.
Funny. Totally off subject story that I thought you would actually kind of find funny is, speaking of translation, I just had Zach Davison on the podcast, and he does a lot of Japanese translation and everything. I guess he's in Seattle area or something, but I met him at Rose City, and he was like, wait, you don't live in Portland? I was like, no, I live in Florida on the East Coast. He goes, oh, I thought you were part of the Portland comics community. And I was like,
well, I think you certainly can claim that.
It's like, I've been adopted.
Yeah, I think you can claim it. You certainly scored just about everybody in the community.
Yeah. I was like, I've been adopted, because he's like, I've been wanting to be on your podcast for a while. I mean, first heard of you from here and there. And I presumed you were part of the Portland's comic community. First of all, I don't even work in comics. I have no claim, but I did say after podcasting, I have worked in a web, done accuracy reading and things, but I'm not like a comic creator by any means. But it was funny because he had this impression that I was like in the Portland comics community. And I was like, oh, I love this so much. I was like, Greg's going to love this.
That's great. Yeah, I would consider you part of the Portland comics community.
Oh my gosh. Yay. I love it.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. All right. Well, I'm so glad we got to talk today.
I am too. You want to?
We weren't sure this was going to happen.
Yeah, well, it came up on short notice, but I'm glad we did it. And
yes, me too.
I'm good.
I needed that. Thank you.
I'm around the next couple of weeks, so.
Oh, good. So am I. So, and there's ever so much to talk about. So
yeah,
we will be
nothing's
back.
going
Mimi
on.
and Greg show is back.
We'll be back,
everybody.
Yeah. We'll talk about shows we like or something.
Yeah, so. we'll make the next one light.
Yeah, it'll be light. It'll be light. There won't be anything in the world. There won't be anything in the world to
nothing's
talk about.
happening ever.
No.
All right. Until next time.
Thank you, Mimi.
Bye.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to The Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram or Facebook.